There we are. We are live. Got the next hour spent with these lovely folk here, ready to contribute to a very interesting discussion today. Firstly, thank you for joining us. If you're joining us now, either scheduled on the event or live on LinkedIn, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully we can keep you engaged through the hour, but if you can only drop in for a little while, then you'll be able to pick this recording up over the coming days here on LinkedIn. And also, if you've registered for the event, we'll send it out to you as well. My name is Owen Richards. I'm the CEO and founder of Air Marketing. I'm joined today by our commercial director, Neil Clarke, and also by two external guests who I'm excited to have join us today. So firstly, Ben Smith. Ben is the manager of business development at ReachDesk, somebody who I've seen talk a lot on LinkedIn and I know posts a lot of content around Outbound and sales development. And I know he's involved in some of the big sales development communities in London as well, and has worked his way up from BDR to team leader and manager over the last couple of years. And then also by Andrew Wood, or Woody, who comes from Willo. Andrew is the founder and CEO of Willo, and I'll let him tell you a little bit more about Willo in a moment. Firstly, everybody, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. How is everybody? Ben, you're in an office. Andrew, look like you're at home. Haven't managed to get out yet.
Yeah. Not allowed out just yet, but there you go. I went to an event this morning which was amazing with a charity called We Mind the Gap. So I did get to meet some people this morning, which was nice, but I'm sure it must be better for Ben being in an office.
Absolutely. I've been waiting for this day for a very, very long time. Sadly, it is just me in the office today, but the team's all back in tomorrow. So breakfast on ReachDesk tomorrow for the team, and then we'll go for some lunch. Just can't wait.
Love it. I have to say, when you said you've been waiting this day for a long time, I thought you meant this event, but then you sort of tied it up and said, no, being in the office. So I got a bit overexcited then. All right, I'll settle down. Guys, thank you for joining us. You're giving up your time today. So it wouldn't be fair for me to not let you do a quick 2 minutes introduction on yourself and ReachDesk, just so everybody knows you and your background. Ben, I'll let you go first. Do you want to give us a quick 2 minutes?
Absolutely, yeah. So I used to be a professional ice skater, a bit of a background to who I am, and somehow managed to get my way into business development and joined a company called ReachDesk, which is where I'm at today. I was the first employee at ReachDesk, so it's myself and the two co-founders of the commercial team to start off with. And in those 2 years, we've gone from the three of us working in sort of beg-borrowed office space, cafes, hotel lobbies, to now being a 110-person company, raised Series A, and it's just been a very exciting journey that's happened very quickly. So hopefully I'll be able to contribute to the conversations today on tech stack and all things sales, and how you go from, coming into a CRM where you've got nothing set up in it to having, I manage a team of 12 business development reps, which I'm very excited to share about. ReachDesk is a direct mail and gifting platform. So we help across the whole customer lifecycle to really deliver those moments that matter by sending the physical gift or direct mail item, helping with sales, marketing, customer success strategies, and ultimately just streamlining the whole process.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And interested to hear how sales tech and technology in general has played a part in building out that sales team. Woody, over to you.
Thank you very much. So elevator pitch, essentially, I am the co-founder and chief commercial officer of Willo, which is a one-way video interview tool, which basically allows you to interview anybody, anywhere, at any time without you having to jump on an actual meeting. So it's a really great way to assess potential rather than paper of the people that are applying. So that's my pitch. In terms of my background, so before Willo, I worked for Pareto Law, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard of. I worked there for 11 years. Before that, I wasn't a professional anything apart from a professional student, and went straight into my career at sales there. Probably worked with about 400 organizations, from SME, hiring their first salespeople, right the way through to HPE as well. So quite a broad scope of experience. And now my role is basically to build our entire sales process for Willo, as we only launched last year.
And this is what I love about this conversation. We've got Ben, who's taken from scratch through the journey, where Andrew's right in that right now, building it, launching a new startup. And I think it'd be really interesting to see all of the different angles and hopefully Neil and I can bring some viewpoints from a range of outbound programs across different clients to see the variety that comes into it. I think one of the themes that always comes out of these conversations is there's no one right way of doing anything, particularly with sales. So I'm sure that will come out in the discussion. Firstly, guys, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate that. To anybody watching, there is a chat function. You leave a comment, post questions on there, and we'll do our best to answer them all. If there's lots of them, I won't be able to bring them all in, but I'll bring them into the conversation as and when I can. If not, I'll save them towards the end and try and load as many in at that point. We'll try and keep the questions relevant to that point if they're going to slot in. Otherwise, as I say, at the end, we'll chuck them in and see how many we can answer. Open forum, guys. So we're going to be talking about sales technology. The notion here is that if you're building a sales team and an in-house sales team where primarily focused on outbound, but I'm sure we'll get some inbound stuff focused on it as well in this discussion. What do you need to think about? There's so much sales technology out there nowadays. There are so many things you can choose from. If you believed all of the content, you would have 25 pieces of sales technology in your sales stack, and you'd be spending about 10 grand a month per rep on it, and you'd be running out of money very quickly. Equally, the other end of the scale, if you're not adopting and utilizing sales technology, you're going to go a lot slower. And it's a minefield to decide if you haven't done that before and know what works and what doesn't work. So we're going to explore that today. Ben, I'll come to you first. Really keen to just get a sense of, when you look over the last couple of years, as you've built out that team of 12 SDRs, what have been one or two of the absolute key pieces of technology that you've used that you just couldn't have done without?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this has changed a lot, especially with the COVID times, because we started the business where COVID wasn't existing, and then had to quickly adapt and move into remote working situations. So there's been a lot of tech which has been helping me as the team have been remote and been growing the team remotely, which I think has been, things like Trello, for example. We didn't, at the time have the budget to be bringing on a LMS tool or the resources to even get behind building out an LMS tool. So Trello was really a great resource for us to build out sort of an onboarding process remotely, really cost effective in the way that you can do it, but essentially you can document everything and make sure that it's shareable within your new team members remotely. And we're only just moving away from Trello now and kind of setting up Lessonly, which is going to be our new LMS tool. But definitely Trello was one of those tools which I couldn't have lived without, onboarding people remotely. Also just helping me to stay organized and helping me organize the team's time as well, making sure that they've got resources all in one place. They don't have to be jumping around Google Docs or trying to navigate a pretty untidy shared drive, if I put it that way myself. So Trello was great, but also obviously the CRM is really important. We used Hubspot to get us started. Hubspot was great because they do quite a good package if you're a startup for the first 2 years, and then with that as well, we could be using it for outbound sequences. All of our marketing content that we had was in HubSpot as well. And the reports, they weren't the best, to be honest, but they're getting better. So HubSpot for me was the other tool which was really crucial to getting that right, to make sure that as we scaled, we have those processes in place within our CRM system, which makes it far easier once you start expanding.
It's really interesting to hear that you've gone straight towards that functional stuff, that stuff that really, it's the foundations of what you can build on top of. I had an interesting topic or conversation last week about how in sales, particularly in outbound, the CRM system is going to die. So, the notion of you still need it, but actually we're now moving data outside of CRM to do outbound with and talking back rather than hosting it directly within, which is maybe a topic we can come on to later. But a really good start. Woody, you're launching a new outbound process, no doubt going to build a team and be hugely successful over the coming months and years. Where did you look first? Like, what's your instinct telling you at this stage that you need to be looking towards?
Here's hoping it goes well. So I think the main area of focus for an outbound team for me, and I think it probably is for Ben as well, first and foremost, is finding data and people to actually speak to. And in COVID, that is the most laborious and difficult thing, number one. And then secondly, as we test things, so this is speaking as a founder rather than a sales leader, we need to test as much as we can for as little as cost as possible, basically. So actually, utilizing technology that does sequences in the background whilst you're asleep or whatever in different markets, and all of that kind of stuff is just really, really important that you build something. So we used Hubspot as well, but we used it for free for a very long time, whilst we were trying to get some traction before we could afford to pay for anything. And it was, finding technology that fed into that. HubSpot can be your all singing, all dancing solution, but a lot of it's quite clunky actually, and doesn't work particularly well. So things like Sales Navigator, finding leads. The biggest challenge that I find still is finding a data and information service that gets you accurate data for definite. And we've tried lots of different ones, and especially when you're a startup, it's really, really difficult to find something that's actually affordable within that. So that's the things that I'm searching for at the moment. The other stuff that I get enthusiastic about is after you've actually engaged with somebody, how do you then grow your footprint within that organization, start to understand the different decision makers, where you're at in the buying cycle, using the technology that you've got, and actually gaining insights from their kind of behaviors with all the different emails that you send, the different proposals, quotes, etc., which can be very interesting.
Yeah, brilliant. Look, it's interesting. Both using HubSpot, we use HubSpot as well. I think let's give some transparency on that. And I think we've raised some of the pros and cons. One of the great things is that you can get in HubSpot from a sales perspective for free to start with, and it is a very functional, usable pipeline management tool. Okay, you won't get the reporting, you won't get the automation from the free version, but if you are starting out, it's a very, very good option for you. And I think as Ben said, then as you move into the packages, you're able to think about sequencing and automation. I think out of all of the CRMs that are pure CRMs and not outbound sales focused software, it's a great starting point. And you kind of touched on something there, though. Interestingly, you're then kind of tied to things that talk into HubSpot. And I think people often need to stop and think at the beginning of this process and say, well, look, once I'm in with something, it's very difficult often to move away from something. So the consideration of where do I start from a CRM perspective, perhaps before you even build your outbound program, is clearly such a critical thing. So some interesting points there. Neil, you've had a similar point, certainly over the last sort of 6-12 months. You've come in, you've taken a reasonably mature sales operation in terms of new business for air, in terms of the ability to win clients, but perhaps not in terms of process and maturity of data. What have you seen from a technology perspective? Are there a couple of tools that are maybe the highlights for you over the last 6-12 months?
I think the highlights have been where we focused on the prospect journey and the potential client journey. Which tools enhance that and lock in nicely? I think the bits that offer data and insight have certainly helped us. So as you said, came in and we've got HubSpot. We've got very clear investment in data tools, utilizing data brokers and also Cognism and other areas. So it's what enables us to move forward on the sales strategy. What's the budget? What can we afford? What is going to be right for the budget? And utilizing emerging, or certainly emerging for us, video tools, calendar tools, just kind of additional opportunities to drop in what we're already doing from a phone-based, email-based, LinkedIn. It's what are the additional bits that enhance our salespeople.
Yeah.
What do you need to do a better job, a more consistent job, and get that client experience or prospect experience? Yeah.
Do you know, I think you make a really interesting point there that maybe we should have touched on first, which is the why embrace sales technology and a sales tech stack in the first place, because often the reason for utilizing technology, for me at least, is about differentiating yourself, finding a way to stand out, finding a way to separate yourself from the noise of people who aren't embracing it. So whether that's by automation, frequency of content, the number of channels you're able to engage somebody on, the way that you tie all of that together as a journey, or the way that you stand out, i.e. by dropping video in or utilizing imagery or whatever it might be within your outreach? Is all of those things are ways to help you stand out from people who are perhaps just using the phone, or who are perhaps just using email, text-based email? Ben, from your perspective, is there, have you seen that from a technology adoption perspective? Because it feels like you use technology, you're comfortable embracing it, you've got a fairly dynamic team there, albeit fairly young within the organization, but you kind of started out with a bit of a blank canvas, so you've had freedom to grow that. Does it feel like technology has played a key role in you standing out in your outreach against other people they might be talking to?
I mean, definitely technology has helped with that immensely. I mean, I can talk from, we use ReachDesk to send direct mail to our prospects to stand out, cut through the noise. Technology plays a huge role in being able to do that effectively, but also companies are investing a lot more in outbound now, which means it's even more competitive. I prospect sales marketing professionals, but so do a lot of other businesses who are also trying to get the sales and marketing professionals' attention to say, hey, we can help you cut through the noise as well. So there's an immense amount of tools out there which can help enable your sales team to have better outreach, better quality outreach, to be able to cut through that noise a lot more. I think apart from direct mail, which is what we use all of the time, videos played a really huge part in that. I always say that you need to try and look for the opportunity in what everyone else isn't doing. So even if that's LinkedIn, you have LinkedIn, they always bring out new features within LinkedIn. So just stay in the know about what's coming out, what these technologies roadmaps are. I remember when voice notes came out on LinkedIn, people weren't using them, didn't know how to adopt them. So by being able to be on top of that and adopt it really quickly, it just meant another channel, another way that you're able to get in touch with somebody that was a bit different, a bit more creative, and help stand out that much more.
Yeah, brilliant. It's interesting because we've kind of touched on data a few times as well. I want to just take us back to data for a second. Woody, I'll come to you on this. You've talked about that battle of finding accurate data. We did a session 2 months ago on data, the whole hour on data with Jerry Hill from Connect and Sell. I think we could have gone for another 2 or 3 hours easily on the options. And one of the mistakes that I think people make early in the journey when looking around data is looking for the perfect solution, looking for data that is perfect. And we all know, or should know, it doesn't exist, and it's always a compromise. There are good options on the market. There's Cognism, there's Zoom Info, there's Bohurst we use, with Sales Optimize we use as well. All, shouting out to all of them that have played a role in our outbound function for either ourselves or our clients. Some of them are better for some things than others, and on different programs. We have to accept that, and you learn how to know that. But none of them come cheap. And I think that was your point earlier. Woody, how do you see yourself getting around that? Would the compromise be, actually, I've got to stretch myself financially? Or is the compromise on data quality? Or are you trying to find another way to work around that?
So we're quite lucky because we work on a freemium model. So we get a lot of inbound stuff, but we don't ask for telephone numbers and stuff like that, because it's just a barrier, and you see a huge drop off if you start to ask for personal details. So that's our kind of one of our challenges from a inbound perspective, is going, okay, well, we kind of know who you are, but not really. I can't ring you and get hold of you. And having worked in recruitment for 11 years and made 450 calls in a week, I'm like, please, somebody just give me some numbers. So it's a bit challenging to kind of hold yourself back. I think there's always been that discussion where the sales director says to the marketing director, just get me a list of prospects. Marketing director gets a list of prospects, sends them over to the sales director. Sales director, only 25% of them are actual leads or opportunities and numbers. And the sales director goes, this is rubbish, and then the same list comes again. And it's, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result, right? Yeah. So it's not going to change. You're not suddenly going to find all of the numbers of these individuals. I think that the main change, and I'm sorry to say that it's not data going back to the sort of asynchronous world as such, is actually just realizing that, yes, 25% of those numbers are right and 75% are wrong, but what can you do to maximize the other 75% of people? Yeah. And that is making sure that you've got automation for outbound emails, you are using voice notes, video, you have a chat bot, because these people, until they want to speak to you, they don't speak to you. But then as soon as they do want to, they want you to be available and ready to have a chat back with them. And if you miss that opportunity because you've not, set up a chat bot on your website or sent them a video in the past or something, you're not connected with them on LinkedIn, you're going to miss that opportunity. So we're kind of comfortable with the fact that the numbers we get aren't always great. It's the emails tend to be better, actually, through those kind of Zoom Info's Cognism. But also, if you look at Zoom Info, for example, that will give you the organizational tree of who their boss is and just extra insights and that kind of stuff that really adds value when you're going, okay, well, who do I really need to be speaking to, and who are my reps going after?
And I think it's important to say today, what we're not here to do is highlight one particular tool that's great and you should go and buy, or slag off another that we've not had a good experience with, or whatever it might be. I think we need to remain, to a degree, agnostic and focus on the categories, but maybe highlight some of the things that we've used that have worked for us. And Zoom Info's come up, and obviously I think it's a really strong tool in the US, certainly emerging in EMEA in comparison from a quality perspective. As I said before, Cognism, Sales Optimized, Bohurst are three that we use a fair amount, all worth looking at. None of them perfect, but can all contribute to our sales process. Ben, is there anything that you've seen in that category that has helped you at all?
I mean, I'll be honest, I think I've probably used every single data tool there is out there. My recommendation would be to generate a list of, say, 100 contacts where you have a clean set of data for them. Take off all of the data points apart from their name and the company and send it to all the providers and ask them to come back with a data set which matches what you already have to know is good. So that's testing your ICP, your personas, giving them a really good data set list of who the ideal people are that you want to prospect or talk to. And that company, whichever company comes back with the best set, is the one which you should be using at that time. I would always recommend for data to be reviewing your data set yearly, 6 monthly, because data providers, they do change. They come across new sets of data, and you want access to that set of data as quick as possible, essentially. So always make sure you're refreshing your CRM and cleansing that data as well, because it could be yesterday you didn't have a number and the company you're using didn't have a number, but in 2 days, on the next day they will have that number. So it's just really important to keep refreshing and cleansing all your data.
There's also, sorry to jump in. I was just going to say, thinking outside the box. As a founder, again, you're looking for the kind of cheapest, but also what nobody else is doing, alternative to data. So for example, we've worked with a few blogs, for example, and a few job boards and stuff like that, where actually they have access to who's posting remote roles and stuff like this. And actually just thinking outside the box, don't think, okay, I'm going to go with a data provider. Think about who is sitting on a gold mine of whatever the right word is, of data that they've just got in the background that they don't even know about. And you're going, okay, well, do you have access to it? Is it GDPR compliant? Have they, allowed you to market to them with third-party providers, etc.? And then go, okay, well, would you mind sharing that with us as a partner, or can we partner with you? And there's so many different ways that you can, you can just get around that. I can't afford a big data aggregator bit of software. What else can I do that's a bit more widely?
Yeah, I think it's a really valid point. And so much of sales outreach is about relevance, being relevant. And the closer you get, or the further away you get from here's a list of companies we know nothing about, and we'll just contact them and see what happens, to here's a list of companies we know something about and it's highly relevant, and what we can bring to them is relevant, the easier it gets. So yeah, very valid point, really. Thank you for that. I just want to touch on maybe some of the staples, some of the things that are kind of the obvious things to have, but we maybe haven't said out loud yet, because there is so much to talk about. It's my view that, and I was writing this down earlier this morning when I was thinking about it, that if you're going to run certainly an outbound program, you clearly need a CRM, right? We've talked about that earlier. We've talked about HubSpot. There are others out there, Pipedrive, Salesforce, Zoho. There's loads of different things out there for you. You clearly need data. I mean, data is one of the yeah, the sort of three pillars of an outbound program being, right, you've got your data, you've got your sales rep and their ability, and you've got your messaging. You know, those are your three things that you've got to lean on, and all the rest around it is supplementary and can help and support it. But without those things being right, it will never work, full stop, regardless of the technology you use. And then I think to some degree now you've got some sort of sales engagement tool. And I kind of touched on this earlier with the CRM piece, that we've moved away from people sitting in Salesforce running high volume SDR programs directly in Salesforce and accepting the 40% loss of productivity on the basis that Salesforce is built for senior management and pipeline management and reporting, and not for high volume outbound sales activity. And I think people have realized that over the last 5 years and have started to realize I need to plug that gap. And here and we get to things like Sales Loft and Outreach and Airborne, which is more of an agency tool that's a similar thing. Things that plug into Salesforce or Hubspot, whatever it might be, but allow you to run an outbound program with a tool that's fit for purpose. Ben, have you got something like that in play? And if so, can you tell us a bit about how that's worked for you?
Yeah, so to be honest with you, we still use the HubSpot feature for that. So we do all of our sequencing through the HubSpot sales feature, and all of our dashboards still live within HubSpot. I think there is definitely limitations to HubSpot and what you can achieve with that. However, for starting out, it's perfectly fine. I think the likes of Sales Loft, Outreach, I think you've got Outplay coming into the mix now as well. You've had Bluebirds, which kind of flipped things on the head and took it from a different approach, less automated, more targeted. You can get a lot more scalable from it, and you can also track, and really they are designed for outbound sales teams originally. So you know, those tools are just incremental to the success that your outbound team is going to have, because you're able to actually coach them, more importantly, through those tools, rather than just looking at the data and not knowing how to actually use it. Those tools help you to be able to identify and use the data there to be a better coach. I spend half of my time going through dashboards trying to search for the problem, whereas tools like Outreach and Sales Loft, they present the problem to you. They don't just present it to you either, they present it to your team, and your team is actually able to come to you then and feel empowered and be like, hey, I've really identified this problem. This is what I want to do about it. What's your thoughts on that? So I definitely think there's, you know, Sales Loft, Outreach, they're both great tools that definitely worthwhile taking a demo and understanding how they can help you become a better coach, especially if you've not been in that coaching role for very long, or you're not an expert in outbound. They're a really good support system to help you become a better outbound coach and better mentor to your team.
Yeah, interesting. Neil, I want to just come to you because obviously something like a sales engagement platform, something along the lines of Sales Loft or Outreach. Obviously, we use both of those in our business for our sales or clients. Is great, but the purpose of it is to help you go faster, be more effective, you know, reach more people in the same amount of time and reach them on the right channels at the right time and all that sort of stuff. We've obviously had some interesting experience over the last 12 months with some of the more phone-based tools that help you to go faster. So I'm thinking Connect and Sell, Orem, Phone Burner, those sorts of things that allow you to do multiple outbound dials using the phone at the same time and reach more people so that your reps are having more conversations. We're talking about a much bigger investment here. We're talking about something that maybe will stretch you, but if you've got an outbound team that you want to grow with intent, surely things like that are worth looking at as well.
Certainly, and what Ben mentioned it and made me think. Once you've got your kind of your CRM in place, when you look at what the blend is going to be, you know, outbound, inbound, Woody touched on the whole, you know, of your 100%, you know, target or prospecting, 90% will be in nurture. You know, so how do you keep those people in play, keep in touch so that when it's right, they have an awareness and they know who you are and what you do. It also helps us to identify how we can make improvements a lot quicker. So take an Orem and a Connect and Sell to have, you know, 10 times the amount of conversations because you're plugging into a turbo dialer or you're coming straight through, allows you to do something that you might do it over a month. You could do that in a day, a couple of days, and it controls the variables. So it starts being about pitch. It starts looking about data rather than being over such an elongated period of time. You might look at seasonality. August is it's a tough month for contact rate because people are on holiday, so we can't draw too many comparisons. Sales Loft, you can see exactly when people start falling out of sequence, and you can hone right in on that point. With things like Sales Loft Outreach, I think the trick that people are, and I think everybody on here today is very plugged into, is trying to affect it so people don't realize they're in a sequence. The worst bits are when you're going to get an email in 24, 48 hours because you're plugged into a sequence. The best ones are when you get a nice note from someone, a voice note or a little video saying, "Hey, Neil, I reached out a couple of days ago," and inevitably the breakup email at some point. so I think there's lots in play with those, and it's about, you're right, it's about budget. Some of those are really affordable, and it's just understanding what you want to get out of them.
So
Neil,
let's go on, go Ben.
I was going to say, Neil, I've got a question for you actually, because I've not used a dialer tool before. Would you say a dialer tool is more for companies who are prospecting on a lead basis, or does it still work for companies who are prospecting on, say, an account basis? Maybe their ACV is a little bit higher, being a bit more targeted in their approach to having a list of contacts to dial through.
I think you certainly need a good number of targets, so a decent addressable market to be able to walk through. I mean, with something like Aurum, when you're then kind of calling back, so you'll go out on 5 numbers at a time, up to 10 numbers at a time. You don't call back on the same number, so they don't, effectively it's not just a repetitive, you've called me 6 times in the last sort of 24 hours. Targeted wise, you could potentially, depending on what you're going through, if you've got good gatekeepers, you've got good people who are good at conversations, then it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant at getting those conversations quickly. ACV, yeah. I think it all depends on the velocity of conversation, the amount of data that you've got to go through.
I think a lot of it comes down to total addressable market, doesn't it, Neil? As in, if you touched earlier about having 100 people, that's a very quality account-based approach, and you plug a dialer into that and you guys are going to be done by 9:30 in the morning and wonder what to do for the rest of the day. Equally, if somebody turned around and said to you, Ben, I need you to triple revenue in the next 6 months, or triple the number of pipeline we're producing at an SDR level in the next, well, there's a number of ways to do that. You can enable and train and develop. Well, that's not going to get you that far that fast, but it will get you going in the right direction. You can triple your workforce, which triples the amount of activity, but there are a lot of moving parts in that and a lot of things that can go wrong. And we all know that doubling doesn't necessarily get you double the result, and so on and so forth. Or you can have the same reps who are predictable with the same process talking to more people. And that's a really good way of solving that. But absolutely, you've got to look at, something like a connect and sell will be doing 150 calls an hour, but it will get you 8 conversations an hour. Working without a connect and sell, you might get 2 conversations an hour or 1 conversation an hour. So you're going 10 to 15% as fast, but naturally that means you've got to have a bigger addressable market. So I think it's like anything. It's if you sell into, FTSE 500 only, not the right tool necessarily, and it's a quality approach. If you've got a total addressable market, and that's where I think smart companies can think about segmentation. So can I take my high volume transactional speed approach to market and win some run rate accounts and win a lot of them quickly? And can I do my quality outreach over here to look at that account-based approach for our, our tier one, really high level accounts that we want to go out and win that we've identified? And I think it's about kind of looking at where you sit. Some will only be able to do one of those, and some will have the luxury of being able to sell into multiple markets. And that's where I think picking the right technology and the right tools for the right strategy is absolutely key.
And that's why you should start with the client's experience. Ben talked about it right at the beginning. Start with the client journey first. How are they going to buy from us? Not how are we going to sell to them? And also think, where does, and this is something that we've worked through, is like, where does the marketing technology responsibility start and finish? Where does sales technology responsibility start and finish? The good thing with HubSpot is those two can overlap, right? But if you're doing that 90% and nurturing correctly, a lot of that should really be sort of marketing-esque stuff. Plus, having the really niche touches from a salesperson. But what Sales Loft and Outreach and all of those wonderful tools absolutely does is really hone in on your craft of actual outreach, not just automation, but actually, really having quality conversations. And you're never going to have that from a dialer. But if you're selling widgets for £20 and that everybody needs them, then get through as many calls as you can. What's the point?
That's it. And this is that, like, where does your and confidence of reps and experience of reps comes into play. And there's so many elements that you have to consider and this is what I see people buying sales technology, because the sales rep, the AE at that sales technology is good at selling it to you. And of course you can see that it can work, but the consideration shouldn't be, can it work? It should be, is it right for you? Is it right for you in your market with your team at this time? And do you have the time, space and capacity to adopt it properly? And I think often it's less about what technology you're using and more about how you're intending on using it. And sometimes keeping a simple sales stack at the beginning makes a lot of sense, whether that means doubling down on one piece of technology. We're going to use this and we're going to absolutely master it, and then we're going to think about something in 12 months time. So that might be a HubSpot. Ben, it feels like you've done that. You've really you're pushing HubSpot to its limits and making it do everything you can do so that you know full well where the gaps are. And then I would envisage over the next 12, 24 months, you'll start to go, right, I need to plug this in and that in because that's where the gaps are, versus trying to do it all in one go. And I think there's a really healthy conversation, because as much as we can sit here and say, you should use that technology, or that technology, actually we can't know without getting into an organization. It's about maybe what are the ways in which we can assess what's right. Because I walk through this and I look at even the data. We've talked about, Ben, you've talked about data providers where you actually buy data and append information against a set of companies. Andrew, Neil, we've talked about Bohurst and Sales Optimize and Cognism and all the rest of it. And Ben, I know you've used a lot of those as well. But then what we haven't touched on is the enrichment tools, Lead IQ, Lusher. These are things you could have 4 or 5 data tools before you even get started and pick up a phone and speak to somebody. So it does get complex. I just want to move on to one topic which has come up, we've touched on very quickly a couple of times, but not dug into, which is the sales enablement part. Because sales technology and looking at it from hey, how's it going to help us to reach prospects is great. But actually, sales technology also should be looked at as a tool to try and enable your team and train and develop and try and get them to be better at the job. Ben, you touched on Lessonly a little earlier. Obviously, there are people like MindTickle out there, a great platform for people who want to try and embrace that sort of coaching culture. And then, of course, you've got things like Refract and Gong are coming into the market now as well. And I think that market is going to get really crowded. Outreach and Sales Loft are starting to put the call coaching software into their platform as well. So there's a lot of onus being put on to development now. Ben, I'll come to you because you touched on Lessonly. Why have you gone with Lessonly? What's the thought behind that, and the investment strategy, and how are you planning to use it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason behind implementing Lessonly for us really is because we're going into this scale mode now. So I'm hiring constantly all the time. I'm onboarding new BDRs on a monthly basis, and for me to be sat there and delivering training on our key personas, how to use our tech stack, people can learn that from from a video and from an engaging platform. They don't need me to run through a presentation. What I can start to do now and start to optimize with the help of that Lessonly tool is to do the one-to-one coaching following that. So testing what they've actually understood from it, putting in their quizzes, tests, knowledge feedback checks to really understand where the gaps are in their knowledge of their understanding. And hopefully that will help ramp up the BDRs a lot quicker. I think I definitely saw a slowdown in progression for being remote onboarding. And we want to be encouraging this hybrid remote world, because it is fantastic to be able to come into an office a few days a week, to be able to work home from home a few days a week. But you need to have the tools and technology to support you in that movement. And I want to be cracking on with the fun stuff, and so do they. They don't want to hear me going on about the same presentations all the time. They can watch that from a video, but then we can get into the weeds of what it actually is that's going to help them improve, do role plays, get them to write emails and go through those emails and keep checking them. That's the fun coaching stuff. Reading a presentation isn't fun for anyone, but obviously Lessonly can help with that.
Yeah. Woody, any thoughts on that enablement and development side and embracing technology?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is that regardless of how good the technology is, if your playbook is no good because you didn't spend the time to write it properly, it was pointless doing it anyway. So the first thing is make sure that actually the content that you're putting in there is relevant, is going to help them, is palatable. I've fallen foul of writing a 120 slide, induction document. This is what we believe Willo to be, all of that stuff, and then had to cut it down to 5 slides or whatever. So the first thing is do that. And then secondly, so we don't use Lessonly. We're not going to be using it for a while. I do like it. I love the idea of that kind of stuff. Also, we just use Aircall for recording calls, listening back to them. I can see everybody's emails in the CRM. So I think whilst it's a great space, until you're of a certain size, it's definitely not worth investing in, because what you can use is just your G Suite of presentations, plus all of the technology that we use to engage with clients are like post demo, so Loom videos, one-way asynchronous screen sharing, etc., Vidyard, whatever it is. They're actually really good, and we just have a channel in our twist, and basically whenever somebody asks me something that they don't know the answer to, and they probably should, but I haven't taught them it yet, and I realise these people don't know what they don't know, I just record a quick Loom video and put it straight in there, and that's kind of the repository to learn from in the future, basically. So
I think you hit the nail on the head right across this topic there. I know you were focused on enablement, but actually technology becomes a crutch and a problem if you haven't got the theory of what you're doing right in the first place. And I think that's not just in enablement, but also right across the sales process, that I think too many sales leaders are out there saying, oh, cool, to get our outbound program, we'll just get SalesLoft, we'll get Outreach, we'll get Salesforce, and we'll plug in a Cognism, and off they go. And actually,
and they'll just write amazing emails.
Just do it by themselves.
We've given them the technology.
Love it. Neil, I'm going to come to you. Question from the audience. Peter Bannister, friend of ours. He shares lots of our content, and we engage a lot on LinkedIn. Peter, thanks for joining us. And given that there are multiple layers to the tech stack, how do we view integration? What's your take on the importance of integration, getting it right, all that sort of stuff? Neil, I'll come to you first.
It's harder than it's sold in. It's everything integrates and is an API and talks nicely. I think in reality, it's how the SDRs or the BDRs can utilize it within. And I think there's a few spin outs which have automatically or been sort of integrated with like a Salesforce, so they're kind of an easy adoption. There's also some fairly straightforward. So if you've got a HubSpot, Salesforce, there's relatively easy integrations because they will help you as part of that onboarding process. But as far as complete integration, I think we're still a way off. I know I've got a lot of tabs on my on my browser, which have got all my shortcuts to Vidyard and to Loom and to various bits. But it's getting there. I think the kind of we're not quite at that point, but I think we're getting there. New entrants are still coming in, and you touched on it with the Mind Tickles, Refracts, the Gongs, all the kind of those bits. Integration into those systems is difficult unless they've gone out and have some huge R&D. I mean, I wanted to also touch on the fact where you're talking about sales tech from Sales Enablement, that it's also about what's important to measure going forward. So you got the ability of onboarding SDRs and bringing your new sales team and getting them up to speed, but it's also focusing on what you want to measure from a and what you point to identify where the training, where the additional sales enablement and call coaching and things like that comes in.
Yeah, valid point. Thank you for that. Guys, I'm not sure if you want to add anything to Peter's question around integration.
Well, I would just say you got two options. You either find something that's fully integrated, or you choose other software that's simple that reps don't get bored. So, one of our challenges as a business is integrating with enough ATSs. So obviously recruitment technology is kind of the baby brother, if you like, of sales tech. So sales tech has taken off early and been invested in heavily. HR tech over the last quarter is one of the most invested in marketplaces. So I can see it as a growing business, like how important those things are. And the reason why people buy our software is that the simplicity, or the fact that it's integrated easily. And that's just the mantra that I kind of have when I'm picking a sales tool is, am I getting annoyed using this? Because if I'm getting annoyed and it's really helping me, that probably means that a rep is not going to see the benefit of it the way that I would, and therefore they're not going to engage with it. So integration is important, but I think simplicity and just ease of use is more important.
Good point. Ben, anything to add?
I always think of it like if I'm taking notes, or if I've got my to-do list integration. So if I've got them in multiple places, I'm going to lose something's going to get forgotten. I'm not going to be able to record everything the way I want to. If I take that and flip it into an SDR's perspective, if they've got multiple places they're keeping information and things aren't integrated, then I'm not going to be able to track everything. Things are going to get lost. Things are going to get forgotten. So I think integrations, especially in the SDR sales tech stack, is so important to make sure we're able to do our jobs effectively and not have human error come into that play.
Very, very, very valid point. And I think that what's interesting here is this tends to lend us back to the notion of keeping it simple again. That I think that it is very easy to get pulled into the noise around, I've got to have sales tech to be good and to be cool and to be up to pace with all of my competitors. But remember that your competitors will have the same levels of challenges that you do, integrating multiple technologies at any one point. It's not a race to have the coolest tech stack. It's a race to get to market quickly and do it as effectively as possible. And sometimes that's by keeping it simple, by giving them one or two tools. And I think I would say, to your point, Ben, if they're not integrated and you end up going to multiple places and that kind of stuff, and tying it into yours, Andrew, simplicity of use, yes, but it should be, it's either got to integrate in, or it's got to be something that's completely separate, that you don't rely on that information, where you can plug in when you need it, but you're not living in there all the time. Otherwise, I think you're going to work inefficiently, and you have to question whether that sales technology's plus points and upsides are worth it for the downsides of them not being able to work coherently alongside each other.
I think
sorry, Neil, go on.
I was just going to say, I think what Ben's point about working in HubSpot for some of the stuff that you do, I think is just that really chimes with the point you just made, Owen. It's don't just go to the next shiniest thing to plug it in. Sometimes you're probably only utilizing your CRM or something for 30% of what it can do. It's just that you're moving on to the next thing, either because someone else has got it, or it's new, getting there's quite a lot of noise about it. Typically, there is some functionality across some of the big CRMs that you could probably plug in and have that single or central point of truth. Sorry, Ian.
Oh no, I was just going to say, we've got a CFO advisor, and we were building some reporting stuff with Profitwell and Hubspot all coming into one place. So reps know exactly what they're getting paid. We know exactly what we're doing in terms of MRR from a dashboard perspective. And I was getting really annoyed by things not coming together exactly how I wanted. And he said, well, the most successful companies are the ones that keep things simple and get 80% of the job done in the technology that they use. So I think you can get kind of hung up on, does it integrate, does it not integrate? Is it a perfect integration? Does it do all the elements? And actually, if it's doing 80% of the job that you couldn't have done before, you can kind of sacrifice the 20% of difficulty.
Yeah, and remember, far easier to integrate 2 or 3 key bits of software than it is 10 as well. So again, lending itself to keeping it simple, however you work. And I think that's one of the overarching messages I'd like to get across today is, guys, if you're building out an outbound sales team, just don't overcomplicate it. Don't try and adopt 5, 6 pieces of technology. Do one at a time. Get your CRM right. If you're going to get your data right, get your LinkedIn strategy right. I mean, we've gone 51 minutes into an hour-long conversation here and barely touched on probably the first thing you go out and buy, which is LinkedIn. Yeah. You get yourself onto Navigator. Ben, Woody, whether you'd agree, but it's kind of one of those tools where if you're a sales rep, you have Navigator. It's just part of the journey, isn't it? It's a bit like having a phone nowadays. And go on, Ben.
I'm always amazed at the amount of people that actually have Sales Navigator but haven't invested the time in to learn how to use it properly. The filter options on there are immense. I always challenge my team to go and find a new filter option which is going to bring up new relevant people that we've not spoken to before. It's just I'm a huge fan of Sales Navigator and finding new filters and new ways to use it, because they're always adapting it, always changing it, and it's a really exciting piece of kit to actually have. And also, it's not cheap. So if you're spending 800, 900 pounds a year on Sales Navigator, learn how to use it properly.
You came alive there, Ben. It's almost that's the reaction I'd expect you to get going on the ice rink. So little sparkle in his eye came, didn't it?
It's my new hobby.
I said the word Navigator and he nearly jumped off his seat. It was
really
can I host this event now? Love it. Woody, what's your? I mean, somebody coming out of that recruitment world, I'm guessing Navigator was a fairly key part of your outreach process there.
You would have thought that. I'm going to go completely against the grain and ruin this entire call. Sorry, Ben. Sales Nav's #1 enthusiast. Probably because I didn't understand how to use it properly in terms of so there was one sales guy at the previous place that he would win a lot of deals, and it was all through Sales Nav. And I always envied how he did it, because it was something to behold. He knew exactly how to find people and how to get them, hiring grads for us. And on the flip side, I just focused on the normal LinkedIn and trying to build my personal brand. And I had a lot of people coming to me as opposed to trying to find people to go out. So I think one without the other doesn't really work, because actually if you start sending messages through Sales Nav and you just look like that, in-mail individual, and you don't build any trust on the other side of the platform, then it just falls on deaf ears and you just become the pile of Sales Nav users that don't use it properly, in my opinion. So I do like Sales Nav. It's amazing for finding people, but actually I think the personal brand side of things, but that's probably because, I'm not making the outbound calls right now.
Yeah. Look, I think we talked about data right up at the top of this conversation, whether you use LinkedIn as an outreach tool, whether that be in mails, whether it be voice notes, or whether you use it as a data tool, or both. There's merit in exploring it. I think back to your point, Ben, the biggest, I think, misunderstanding with Sales Nav is just the usage. Is people understanding its full capabilities, and once you do, then it's a no-brainer. And I think when you think about the value versus potential, that balance of, I can go out and give somebody a sales loft or whatever it might be, and it might cost hundreds or even thousands per rep per month for certain technologies. whereas in this case, we're talking about a fairly small number, but a lot of value very quickly if you can get people adopting it and using it properly. And I think that's why, for me, and maybe one of the things we might do to wrap up is just think about just 2 or 3 or maybe 4 of the things that you would absolutely look at if you were building your outbound sales team for the first time. And from my perspective, I think, we've touched on HubSpot a lot. You need a good CRM, somewhere to keep the data, see the reporting, make sure that you can be consistent, manage pipeline once pipeline is produced, all that sort of stuff. Certainly, I would be looking at some kind of sales engagement tool layered on top of that, and you might not do that straight away, to your point, Ben, earlier, but it might be something that certainly once you've tested the sequences in a HubSpot or something, like, you might want to push a bit further. But it also allows you to integrate into other things like LinkedIn and those sorts of things fairly seamlessly. And Sales Navigator would be in there for me as well. And the other thing is a data tool. I think if you've got CRM, data, LinkedIn, and potentially, and it is potentially an engagement tool, you've got a really good starter sales tech package where you can give that to an SDR and say, hey, you've got good tools. You've got really good tools. Things on top of that, absolutely, I can see value in Refract and Gong. I can see value in, I would actually add into that something like a Vidyard or Loom, because for the price value thing, again, it's so cheap. It'd be silly not to be using it in some ways, but again, I don't think we're talking about massive investments there. But all of the other things that come, Connect and Sell, Orem, we've talked about data tools like Cognism and Bohurst and all the other ones that you can get. To a degree, I'd say those can come later once the process is matured, the sales tech stack is solid and comfortable and predictable, and then you can start to layer in the complexities that help you go faster when you know what it looks like without those, and when you're comfortable that you're not overcomplicating. Keen to hear, maybe Woody, I'll come to you, whether there's any difference in thinking around that.
Not really. Start with the CRM that is scalable, and then if you're just starting to build your outbound team, you've got an idea of what your ICP might look like, but you don't know whether these people are going to speak to you very much, actually. So, don't invest too much money in an automation tool. We use something called Clenty, which, was like £30 a month and was a full automation tool, went into HubSpot. And it was just, it wasn't great, but it allowed us to kind of test the market. So just start as cheap as you can, which sounds super stingy, but start as cheap as you can and then scale out. But make sure the central point isn't a cheap solution. Make sure the central point is something that you can have, 50 reps on in the future.
Yeah, very valid.
And then the other point, I would, absolutely have a video tool, Loom, Vidyard, whatever it may be. Even though you can send videos, obviously, on your phone and LinkedIn, but have a video tool that makes you stand out from the crowd. And I don't actually know how much Reach Desk is, but if you really want to do something different and more targeted in an outbound, something like direct mail in that kind of way is totally changing the game of contacting people. So why not do something different?
Love that. Ben, you're going to have to say something about Willo now,
plug.
I think. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We're called Willo, Ben.
I know all about it.
I'm joking, obviously.
And he's not stingy at all. He said it about 5 times, but he said...
Yeah, not stingy. No.
The only other tool I'd add on to that is something like a lead feeder, to be honest with you. So really understanding the intent, although it's seen as a marketing tool, it's so important for sales reps. If you know who's looking at your solution, looking at your site, that's a quick and easy win to hop on, find your correct personas, use your tools like Sales Navigator, your data tools to get their information, and give them a call and book in that meeting straight away. It's a really, really quick, easy tool to get some quick wins there.
Love it. Neil, anything to add?
Only just to make sure that whoever's closing, so account execs, business development managers, if it's consistent throughout, so it doesn't just stop at SDR. It's not just prospecting and then suddenly there's a break and it starts a new process. So just a consistency throughout that whole process.
Is a very, very valid point to wrap us up on. And I think one thing you said, Ben, there that's really resonated with me is you mentioned that the lead for, I said a lot of people think about it as a marketing tool. Hey, our topic next month is sales and marketing alignment. And if any conversation has highlighted how important it is, it's today, because here we are talking about helping sales reps to go further, faster. What technology can we use? And probably 50% of what we talked about is a marketing technology. You know, we started with Hubspot, which is a MarTech. You know, LinkedIn, there's a lot of marketing. You know, there's a lot of marketing activity that goes on in LinkedIn. It's not all sales, and there's a very fine line between the two. And I think today has really shown that, you know, it's not just about sales tools, but it's about embracing the whole the whole ecosystem of technology and across sales and marketing, and how that can help you to move faster. Guys, we have to wrap up. Ben, quick thing from you before we go. Who should talk to Reach Desk, and how can they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So, you know, if you want to learn how to do good outbound or differentiate your outbound, come and have a chat with me. More than happy to share some creative ways that can help you stand out and surprise and delight your customers across the whole customer lifecycle. So anyone sales, marketing, customer success, please come reach out. More than happy to have a chat. Do
you want to just give people you're hanging out on LinkedIn and want people to contact you that way? Was that the best way?
Yeah. Find me on LinkedIn, Ben Smith on LinkedIn, or drop me an email, ben@reachdesk.com. Very, very easy. I'll put it in the chat.
That might be easier. I'd imagine there's a few Ben Smiths. Woody, who needs to talk to you, and how can they get in touch with you?
I thought Ben might be saying get in touch with Woody, as Reach Desk's new biggest fan, but never mind. I'll send any your way, Ben, that come to me. So yeah, in terms of Willo, you can go and try Willo for free. So it's willo.video is the website, or feel free to drop me an email, woody@willo.video, or I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So yeah, just find me on there.
Love it. Brilliant. Gents, thank you very much for your contribution today. Really interesting discussion. And I think just to summarize, we've talked a lot about just keeping everything simple, starting with that core foundation, which is your CRM, and then building on top of that, probably one or two technologies at a time. And I think the overarching message is let's not try and overcomplicate it and get caught up in the flashing lights of sales technology and try to adopt too much, and give your reps a bit of a chance, but equally use it where you can. And I'm sure Woody will remind you to save the pennies and make sure that you don't spend too much too soon as well, because actually we joke, but it's a very, very valid point that I've seen a lot of people go and spend way too much money too early on and then see things not get adopted. And of course you're in a 12-24 month contract for something you're not using. So a very valid point. Gents, thank you ever so much for your contribution today. Really enjoyed the discussion. And to the audience, thank you very much for joining us. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.